Now, when I was doing jiu-jitsu, right, I was really surprised when people much smaller than me used to submit me, like get a submission, and it was very hard. You can be a lot strong. You must have seen Larry Wheels, right? He's like super jacked, but still he's having a hard time going against these wrestlers who are experienced for many years, who look much smaller than him, right? They can throw their weight around a lot, and they can manipulate, and they're very flexible. So it's a different kind of fitness. It's more of a endurance, right? You must have seen the athletes. They've been training for a really long time. They've been training for 10 years, 15 years, but they're not super jacked because it's more of a endurance moment, and they have like more slow twitch muscles, especially the ones who do it professionally. And yeah, they have good cardio, and you need a lot of cardio, especially when you're doing MMA or anything related to combat sports, right? You need a lot of cardio. So when I started out, I set a goal that I wanted to lift very heavy. I reached around like 465 total in SBD, right? Squats, bench, and deadlift combined. That was my total. And then I also wanted to do handstand push-ups, but I kind of gave up on that. And I also wanted to learn backflip. But these are like a lot of different ways to experience your fitness. But I kind of backed on backed out of that because I didn't want to injure myself. Right? And one more part of my journey was that I used to work as a cloud engineer in a company, but then I quit the job. What happens after you quit the job is that you kind of lose a bit of purpose in your life. But then you spend your time and you try to figure out things that you actually want to do. So for me, it was making content and building something with AI and all that. So when you have a lot of free time, it also is a test of your character, right? When you have a job and you have a structure around it, and you kind of follow the routine and you have a disciplined life. But then when you don't have a structure and you're trying to build some structure, and if you're not disciplined, and it might cause a lot of panic, and then you might think that how do I earn the money, how do I sustain myself, will people respect me, and all that. And yeah, even in the job, like a lot of people I see, they have like bad posture, and because you got to sit right on the desk. If you don't sit right, your posture might get bad, and you might have a lot of problems later on. So and even the food usually provided in the workplace might not be that high in protein or something like that. So you have to manage, especially for the people who are working a lot of desk jobs. They have to be very careful with their food, and it plays a big role in keeping you healthy. Now after this, after a long time, finally one of my friend reached out and they asked me to coach them. So after just going through their lifestyle, I found out that what was their diet like, and sleep and work like. But I see a lot. I see this a lot around people around me, that when I'm out and about, is that their diet is kind of lacking. But training is one part of it. You have to fix your diet, and yeah. And when you try to explain it to others as to why you're programming a routine for them, and it kind of makes you realize that what you're lacking within you, right? When you teach something to others, things become much clearer to yourself, as to you have to explain as to why you're doing a certain thing for them, why you have included certain thing in the program, and then you realize that you have been doing something yourself on autopilot for a long time, and things become much clearer. Let's go, guys. Strength is too much. I think 15 reps of this is quite good. Alright guys, peace out. Bro, most people, when they're training to get strong, right? They're training to get strong. But when you do sports like BJJ or football or basketball, and you're trying to get in contact with people, push people around, and move around a lot, move your body around a lot, apply strength in different angles, that's where your body gets tested for real. Anything can go wrong. You jump and you land, and you jump like that and you land, and you can sprain your leg, and it's a really bad injury, and a lot of things can go wrong. So you gotta be careful. So this is a real story, all right. When I was deadlifting, then my intercostal, I got an injury in my intercostal. What is the intercostal muscle? It's basically a muscle here, right? It's on the rib cage. When there is a rib cage, right? If this is a rib cage, it's a really bad drawing. I think I have a better drawing somewhere. This is a, if, you know what a rib cage is, right? So it's a muscle connecting the rib cage. It's a very small muscle and it really hurts when you tear it. So when you're deadlifting, right? When you're deadlifting like that, if you're deadlifting, when you try to pull the weight up, you might injure it. You're moving in a different direction. If you don't activate your hamstrings, if you don't warm up properly, there's a high chance of injury. And you don't want to do that, bro. You do not want to injure your intercostal muscle. So after getting injured over there, I had to pause my barbell work for a long time, right? And then I started reading books. I read Eric Helms, I read Mike Israetel's book, a lot of other books to injury prevention, and a lot of things on how to build strength after injury, right? So it was a long journey, but it really paid off and I learned a lot of things. And after that, I had quite a bit of body fat. I also wanted to look quite jacked. I wanted to get some abs. I think if you can see the abs. I want to get some abs. And then, I wanted to lose some weight. And, you can't have a lot of abs when you're, when you got a lot of fat in your body. You gotta track your calories, right? I started tracking my calories. I found what is my maintenance calories. And how do you find? I used AI to find maintenance calories. I think this is a good question to talk on video. How do you exactly find your maintenance calories? I'll probably make a video on that, right? So I started tracking my calories and I started eating, but unfortunately I didn't do it rightly. When I started tracking my calories and eating, I went on a 1900 calorie diet to lose weight. Like I saw an influencer on Instagram, with very jacked physique. Then I also wanted that. So I dropped weight very insanely, and you can't lose weight like that, bro. I'm telling you, can't lose weight like that. Ho! Bro, it was so painful to lose weight like that. I'm telling you, bro, I lost size a lot. I lost a lot of muscle losing weight like that. So you have to be very careful when you're trying to drop weight. I'm telling you, bro, I can't emphasize this enough. So when you're trying to drop weight, you have to make sure to drop it very slowly, perhaps like 150 to 200 grams per week, and be very careful because it can help you, it can make you a little bit crazy to lose a lot of weight. So my diet while losing the weight was like, I used to eat this millet kurmura, roasted chana, peanuts, oats, paneer, curd, air fried chicken, dates. And I used to avoid rice because it used to take a lot of time to cook. But then back then I used to do a lot of cardio, right? Wherever I used to go cycling. Like I'm cycling every day, and it was a lot of cardio. And then it wasn't good. If you do cardio, like if you cycle to the gym and then you're doing legs and you're doing a lot of workout, it's not really that. It kind of hinders your growth. One of the reasons I got injured and my knee used to get injured a lot, because I used to abuse my body a lot before going to the gym. Like I used to cycle 15 kilometers, and that is not right. You can't be cycling that much and then again hit legs, and you can't expect to push a lot of weight when you do a lot of endurance training. All right.